All right. So a lot of people underestimate how big of a actual stress in your life, stress from job, relationships, working out, being late to work, stress can be a big influence on fat loss, right? Now, in this sense, stress is actually not a macro that you can count, but it's something that is very important that you should take into account. That's why I'm stressing that it is a macro, because it's something very important that you should look at and keep in mind when you go about your day-to-day plan. So, in particular, we're going to be talking about cortisol and how that can kill your fat loss efforts. So for one, what is cortisol? Cortisol is the stress hormone. So cortisol is the main stress hormone. It's going to impact everything from fat loss, appetite, recovery, even your reproductive hormones as well too. It has a role in that. They are produced by the adrenal glands when you are under stress. They are helpful short term. We do need cortisol, but too much of it, it can be damaging when it's elevated for a very long amount of time. It'll send signals to your body to hold fat, retain water, break down muscle tissue. Essentially, this is when your body is inflamed. Cortisol is very high. If you're in a very high stress environment, whether that's through your work, in a hectic household where your stress is just to the roof all the time, then your cortisol is probably elevated a lot more than it should be. And again, it can be damaging when it's elevated long term, and that's the issue a lot of folks tend to run into. So, how does high cortisol stop fat loss? So you can still be 100% compliant with your food, your steps, your workouts. You could follow my plan to a T. You could be 10 out of 10 on the check-in sheet and still not see any progress, still stall, just from stress alone. So if we look at like what actual stress does, what high cortisol does to the body in itself, it does a few things. So number one, it's going to suppress your thyroid output. You're going to have lower T3, which is going to equate to a slower metabolism. So again, like we all know that we want a fast metabolism. We want to be able to run through food at a very efficient rate, not have a slow metabolism to where if you eat just a little bit of food, you're going to gain weight, right? We want a fast metabolism and efficient metabolism. It's going to raise your blood sugar and increase insulin resistance. So, as you guys know, more insulin resistant that you are, the harder it is to lose body fat. So, if we're, having these high bouts of high cortisol and we see that your blood sugar is constantly spiked up, it's constantly raised, it's constantly high, it's going to increase your insulin resistance and in essence make fat loss harder. It's going to increase belly fat storage and water retention. So I mean, just if you just have, you can look at somebody for the most part and tell if they are very stressed, or you can look at somebody who was not sick last week and they're sick this week. Their pictures look very inflamed. They're holding a lot of water. They look flushed. You can definitely tell a body that's high stress, high cortisol, things of that nature too. Now, if we look at more of like the mechanisms of like hunger, it's going to drive hunger up. It's going to throw those cravings up, and you may even have a potential binging episodes. And then again, if we do have these bouts here to where you have high hunger, high cravings, and you have these binging episodes, well, you're probably going to further increase this belly fat storage, a potential water retention that comes along with binging episodes, and then you're going to have your blood sugar spike up, and you're going to increase your insulin resistance. So a lot of these are like a domino effect. If you do one of them, or you have one that just starts to happen as a byproduct of high cortisol, a lot of these other ones, as like a domino effect or a trickle down effect, just kind of tend to happen. And then again, like you could even see things as far as like your recovery is gonna tank out. Your libido is not gonna be there at all, and your mood is gonna be crashed out, depressed, just not in a mood to really do much of anything at all. And then so one hidden stress, so let me back up. A lot of people think that stress is stress from the job, stress from I don't know, kids hollering and screaming all the time. But a lot of people ignore a few hidden stress triggers to where, typically people associate stress with just mental stress, right? If you say, "Oh, I'm stressed out," typically that's a mental thing, right? You typically don't see that from the physical side of the stress, right? Such as like the diet and the training. So again, if you have too much cardio, and then you're eating very low food, that itself is a stressor on the body. It's kind of a double whammy. You're doing a lot of cardio, which is a lot of stress on the body, and then you don't have enough food to properly recover. That itself is a stressor. And then if you're doing, let's just say if you're doing this, and then you need caffeine to, um, keep you going, help maybe curve these low food cravings, you're going to have caffeine overload, and then caffeine too late in the day is going to result to poor sleep. Like again, you can kind of see if you skipped ahead on some of these, how a lot of these kind of topple on top of each other. Again, that domino effect. Skipping meals or long fasting windows. Again, inflammation, gut issues, under recovery. Then you have life stress, which is work, family, poor boundaries. Like for me, for instance, like here in the past week or two, I have kind of set a boundary for myself, and you may have noticed after 7 p.m., if you send me a message, I do not respond. Typically, what I do is I take my phone, I plug it up here in my office, and I don't touch it until the next morning when I wake up. I have an alarm clock in the room instead of just relying on my phone to wake me up. That way, I'm setting boundaries and I'm not, constantly looking at my phone every 2 seconds. Because that, in essence, you guys know if a lot of you work in front of a computer all day or on your phone all day, or you have a lot of people that you have to answer to, such as myself, that mental stress of always waiting for the next notification to come through. At some point you have to cut that off and set those boundaries. Mainly for mental stress, for the mental health side of things as well too. So, and honestly, that I've been able to tell a difference in my sleep. How quickly that I fall asleep, how long that I stay asleep, and that could be from a lot of things. It's not just from the stress of not looking at screens for the last, 2 to 3 hours of my night. But there could be some, aspects of just, hey, finally getting a break from the electronics, and in essence, right before bed as well too. Um, Now, how can you actually spot high cortisol in your check-ins? Now, you can obviously go get blood work done, see what your cortisol levels are. But if we're just looking at it on a day-to-day basis, a check-in basis, we can do that as well too. So we can see this through body weight scale spikes or stalls despite a clean eating. If you come to the check-in, you've been 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 all week. Cardio is hit, steps are hit, water intake was good, digestion is good. Like you're checked every single box. You're good, right? But I go and look at your fatigue, and you're like a 7 out of 10 as far as fatigue goes. And then we look at how your weight has trended across the week. You might say, something is going on here. So I might ask you a further question. Hey, I see your fatigue is a 7 out of 10, right? Can you explain that to me a little bit? And we may have to dive into that a little deeper. But it finds out that, hey, you may just be experiencing a pretty high level of stress from this week, right? A lot of people experienced that last week with Thanksgiving. The stressors of, how to navigate through Thanksgiving food, stressors of having to drive to and from family meetings, Jacob flying overseas, like, that's a stress too. But nonetheless, there's just things that we can look at, that even if you are perfect on, the very objective things that you have to do, you have to be subjective and look at the other, side of that token as well too, like your fatigue, how stressed out are you mentally and things of that nature too. And then we can look at things as like sleep. If your sleep is broken, like you wake up several times during the night, again, that could be high cortisol. If your cortisol is high, like, cortisol is what helps wake you up in the morning, right? That 2 or 3 a.m. Kind of time in the morning where your cortisol spikes and then it starts to come back down. That is what helps you wake up in the morning. If your cortisol is constantly, redlining, right? You're gonna have a broken sleep. You're gonna feel wired up, but you're just not tired at all. Or it could be backwards. You could be tired as all get out, and you're wired up as well too, kind of like that caffeine feeling. You could have. increase cravings, lower a motivation to train, to do anything, to eat on your meal plan. There's several aspects of that too, or even just poor digestion. And again, this could really be just related to stress in general as well too. Sore for days on end, or your strength in the gym has gone down as well. Mood swings, libido, your sex drive, all that stuff has tanked out. So, this is something more or less that you could look at on your end, right? Like you can give me the that objective data of yes or no if you did this, or on a scale of 1 to 10, how are you feeling? But it's kind of a catch 22 in those scenarios, right? Because if you put a 7 out of 10 on your fatigue, for the week, your 7 out of 10 is probably different than my 7 out of 10, right? You may think that, hey, this 7 out of 10 isn't too bad, right? That's kind of like a normal for you, but on my end, that would be high for me. So again, this is more or less something that you guys could, kind of audit yourself at during the week. Like if we're seeing, progression stall, instead of looking at what you've done perfectly all week. Let's look at the other outside factors, just to make sure that those outside factors, stressors, things like that aren't actually stalling your process as well too. And because you have to think about this too, if you have high cortisol and you have been very stressed out all week, going back to the earlier slides, it says that you're going to have water retention and things like that. If you have high cortisol, and you've been 10 out of 10 as far as your plan adherence this week, you may actually be dropping body fat, but that extra water retention that you're holding on your frame is showing no result, right? But once you pull that cortisol down and you get that stressor off, that water is going to drop off too. So you may see, several pounds swing in the favorable direction of, going down if you're trying to lose fat just in a number of days, if you can wash that cortisol, that high stress off, because it can mask fat loss, if you see what I'm saying there. And so, if we really want to know how to, lower that cortisol, we need to just actually fix the root problem of it, and that's going to be lower the stress first. You can add in supplements all day long, but that's kind of the last thing that I like to do. Essentially, that's putting a band-aid on things, right? We need to make sure that we're doing the basics, the free things first, right? Make sure that we get daily walks in. If you can get outside, get some sun on your face, some fresh air in your lungs, that's going to help you a lot. Lower the stimulants if you can. I mean, there's no way on God's green earth that you need 3 to 4 energy drinks to get through your day. If you do, we probably need to have a talk on that one. Add additional rest days. If you're feeling very fatigued, worn down, there is no shame in taking an extra rest day if you need it, or if we need to taper back on, some of the cardio for a few days to make sure that stress can be lowered. We can do that. And a prime example of this is like if you're getting a refeed, right? A refeed period is a point to where that we're trying to de-stress the body. We're trying to add in more food, right? To maybe relieve some hunger, maybe relieve some fatigue. So we're trying to wash as much stress off of the body as we can. So we're also going to get rid of extra stressors at that time. In point two, like Preston this week, I give him a refeed this week, and we pulled all of his cardio out because again, we're trying to wash the stress off. But if we're trying to wash the stress off and we're putting more stress in the bucket, then we're not being as efficient as we can from getting that stress to come off in an essence. Um, you could use carbs strategically, especially pre-bed. This essentially is just to make sure that, you're using a slower digestive carb with a little bit of fats as well too. So once that blood sugar spikes up, that fat can help kind of blunt that response. And it's more of a gradual coming down instead of it spiking right back up and it comes right back down. That is a good strategy to use as well too. Essentially, if we have enough food at play, I don't want you going to bed hungry, because going to bed hungry is more likelihood of you are going to wake up in the middle of the night. And this kind of ties into it as well too. If we can get 7 to 9 hours of deep sleep, not 7 to 9 hours of being in bed on the phone for 3 of these hours, this is actually sleeping. You know, I've told people in the past that the bedroom is good for two things: sex and sleep. That's it. You should not be on your phone for hours and hours and hours on end. That's why that I have been trying to do a good job of leaving my phone in here, just so I'm not tempted to scroll on it, essentially. And then again, if we need to add in supplements like, the magnesium or taurine to help, we definitely can. But the main thing is set your boundaries. Stress comes from the inputs, not just the efforts. So again, look, if you sit down and you like really think about what are the biggest stressors in your life, right? Like if you're an individual who gets on social media and your page is full of hate, political stuff, propaganda stuff, and that just like irks your nerves, it gets you all worked up. You want to comment on everything that you see. A good way to do that is just delete the app or block it. For a certain number of hours. Like there's definitely apps on your phone that you can download to help block, the use of Facebook or Instagram, and only limit it to like 1 or 2 hours a day. And once that time is up, then you're done for the day, right? So like if we're seeing trends and things that really like set you off, then maybe it's time to get away from those things. And, because obviously stress comes from the inputs, at that point, we just kind of have to control what we can control on that front. So that's all that I got for you guys today. I know that we have definitely talked about cortisol in some aspects before, but really just kind of wanted to drive that point home that if you're 10 out of 10 perfect on everything and you have other life stressors that are potentially hindering you, that could be something to look at. I've learned as a coach that is something that you should definitely look at a little more detail in close. We can always look at numbers, right? What's your average weight from last week? What's your average weight to this week? Were you coherent all week? We can objectively look at data, right, and see if the data is doing, what we want it to do. But on the flip side of that coin, you have to also look at the, subjective side of things too, and just say, hey, yeah, Jacob was, 10 out of 10 this week. He did everything that he had to do, but he also had exams last week. He was moving. He had a very high stress. His dog got sick, whatever. Like you have to look at those aspects as well too. Because again, if that cortisol spikes up and it stays elevated, it can mask fat loss. So you just kind of have to take all of that into effect and don't jump the gun and make, irrational decisions without looking at the whole picture is the best way to put that. Um, Anybody got any questions? Anything to add on that?
The only thing that I'm kind of curious about, because I know you mentioned like the supplements thing and just kind of briefly mentioned the magnesium. I know that we take, I guess, I assume everybody does the like the calm
Yep.
magnesium
Yep.
titrate. And what is that? Is that just like a vitamin that is it kind of similar to vitamins where you're just kind of like putting that in as like a precautionary type thing, or what is that doing?
Why do I want you guys to take it? In
Yeah,
essence, is that what you're
yeah,
saying?
right.
It's mainly because it's kind of twofold. For one, digestion. It does help people a lot with digestion as well too. And if you take it right before bed, it does have those calming effects. And then you've been on a lot of these calls before. One of the most overlooked parts of this entire program is the importance of sleep and the recovery that happens during sleep, right? So like I think that it's a good supplement that everybody should be using if they can tolerate the magnesium, really just from the standpoint of, hey, it's going to kill two birds with one stone. It should keep our digestion regular and it should help us sleep a little better at night. And then it also like I take it in the mornings, sometimes as well too. Like especially on like check-in days when I know that my stress is going to be higher than normal. Not saying that you guys stress me out from time to time, but I know that my workload is going to be a lot higher than normal on those check-in days. So I may take some just to kind of help de-stress as well too. So like I have some clients who have tried it and they don't like it or it doesn't set well with them, like, you know, that particular formulation of magnesium doesn't sit well with their stomach and they can't handle it and they can't take it, and that's fine. But in that case, then we really have to make sure that their digestion is on point and their sleep is good, because you know that if your digestion gets backed up, we're not properly digesting the food, which then that needs to be looked at. And then if we're not sleeping, good either, those are kind of the two main caveats to look at if we're trying to progress each and every week. So
Got you.
I would say that's the main reason. Um, and I've been using it for years, and um, it's done me wonders. And honestly, I think that's like one of three or one of four supplements that I like recommend people use. And several podcasts that I've listened to, I've heard other coaches say that they implement that into their clients' plans like from day one as well too. So it's not just something that I found on Amazon, or somebody told me to take and I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna make everybody else take this. No,
Yeah,
like I've tried it myself, and it helps. I mean, even my wife takes it. I've got my sister-in-law taking it. It's just, I think it's good for everybody to take it.
yeah.
So
And I've pretty consistently taken it in the mornings. If
yeah.
you, so like if I were to switch it tonight, how do you normally do that? Do you do that a certain amount of time before?
Right before I get in bed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. Like I'll get a little thing of water. Put one scoop in there, mix it up, and drink it. Brush my teeth, and then get in bed. And then there are times to where if I really want to make sure that I'm getting great sleep, I'll take a magnesium glycinate pill as well too to help knock me out even further. I will say those give me, I don't know if it's a combo of the two or what it is. Maybe it's a placebo, but I have some of the wildest dreams when I take those two combined. I'm not sure what in the world that does, but yeah, pretty wild stuff.
Yeah.
So, but yeah. Anybody else have anything? If not, well, I will let you guys go. If you guys got any more questions with anything, please don't hesitate to reach out. Hope you guys having a good Thursday. I know Preston will have a good day tomorrow because he gets 3 days of a refeed. Um, I think it's his first one ever, at least with me. So, but nonetheless, if anybody has any questions or anything, please let me know, and I will talk to you guys soon. We'll see
Okay.
y'all.